Dr. Yamina Bugunaya is going to be the main instructor of these series, and I'm Maha Nuruddin. I'm going to be your discussant. We have a presenter today. So, Isra, are you available and unmuted?
Yes, inshallah.
Okay. If you're speaking, kindly put your cameras on, and we advise people who speak or to turn their cameras on as well. Again, welcome everyone. Let me introduce Dr. Isra Yasiolu. She is a team member of Receiving Noor. She has had the privilege of studying works of Imam Saeed Nursi with Dr. Yamina Bugunaya and Dr. Ali Mermer. Coming from a medical science background, she now teaches Islamic studies at a university in the Northeast and has a book on understanding miracle stories in the Quran. So please check out that valuable book, Understanding Miracle Stories in the Quran. She's also written a number of articles on Quran and contemporary Islamic theology. And I'm very pleased to have her with us, my friend, Professor Isra Yasiolu, and please correct my pronunciation, Isra. I'm sorry that I got your last name mispronounced. I apologize.
It's Yasiolu.
Right. So the topic of Professor Isra's presentation, she's going to give us a short presentation, is entrusting our Ismail to God. Entrusting our Ishmael to God. The floor is yours, Professor Isra.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you, Maha. Let's go right into the topic. Let's talk about the verse in the Quran that talks about Abraham and his surrender to God, right? These are one of the places where the Quran talks about surrender. And as many of you, I'm sure know, Abraham tells to his son, alayhi salam, that I see you in my dream, that I'm sacrificing you. What do you think? And his son, who's unnamed in the Quran, but usually we refer to him as Ishmael. He could have been Isaac. It really doesn't matter. The son says, "Do as you are commanded, and you will find me among the patients, steadfast." And then when they both surrender, the Quran says this term is used there, aslama. Then they hear the call that says, "You have been صدقت الرؤيا, you have fulfilled the dream." And then the Quran goes on to praise them and so on. Now, the question that comes immediately is, when we think about surrender, they both surrender, but what are they surrendering to? Superficially, it seems like they are surrendering to losing their beloved, right? If we focus on Ibrahim alayhi salam, is he surrendering to lose his son? And the son, is he surrendering to lose his life? And what kind of a sacrifice is this? And we may ask, how can I surrender to this kind of demand, this kind of thing where I just give up my beloveds and just be fine with it? There's a loss, it seems here, and oftentimes we think, well, Abraham is impressive in his ability to kind of deal with this loss for the sake of God. We add on, but if we go deeper, and I was talking to actually Faraz, my husband, with this, and well, he said something that I really want to share with you. It is a really good way of putting this. The Quran is not about building capacity to deal with loss, right? We tend to think that religion is about, giving us kind of more endurance. It tells us about uh, life after death and so on. So you can hang in there in difficulty. Of course, there's a grain of truth there, but if we stay there, we're actually losing the bigger picture. The Quran is not about building capacity to deal with loss. The Quran is about um, shifting our understanding of the world, our perception of the world, so that we realize that we think is a loss is actually not a loss. To take us to a world where we don't give up the beloved for the sake of God, our relationship with the beloved gets transformed. And so we find a space where there is actually no such loss. Now, um, it's important to notice that in the Quranic story,
Sorry, Isra, could you repeat that last point because it seems to be quite critical? Could you repeat the Quran is not
so
about,
yeah, so the Quran is not about building capacity to deal with loss, uh, i- or it is about um, seeing the world in a new way, clearing our misunderstanding of the world, so that there is no loss. And how is that possible? You see, from one perspective, Ibrahim alayhi salam and the story is willing to sacrifice his son. From another perspective, if we apply it to our lives, um, it isn't for us. We live through Ibrahim's story all the time, not because we have a clear command. We're not a prophet. We don't get that kind of a command and then we choose to carry it out or not. We live through a life that where our beloveds are at all times at stake, right? How come? Because the world is passing. Everything is passing, and those of you who joined the recent Receiving Nur studies, we have recently last month looked at the story, the verse on the verse that says everything is perishing except his face. كل شيء هالك إلا وجهه. And then we reflected on how to find uh, eternity through looking at transience. So the fact is that we live in a transient world. The beloveds are passing, they are dying, right? They may not be dead right now, but they're dying. Whatever I love, the world I love, my youth, the persons I love, we're all transient, we're all passing, we're all perishing. And that is deeply, deeply troubling for any human being who takes the moment to notice this, right? We oftentimes try to numb our feelings so that we don't notice this, but this is a universal concern. What do we do in a world where you get attached to your love and then everything is perishing, right? Within that. So, like Ibrahim, we have our Ishmael. As it were, about to be sacrificed before us or being sacrificed before us. But what is important and exemplary in the case of Prophet Abraham is that he sees through the misperception, right? Everything is passing, but where are they coming from in the first place? And where are they going back to, right? Not necessarily going back to in the next world, but in the sense of at every moment, how are the things coming and becoming alive, becoming beautiful, reflecting a glimpse of mercy, love, beauty, perfection to us, and then they're disappearing. That is the core of the question here. And let's keep in mind when we read this story in the Quran with Ibrahim alayhi salam, he isn't just some hero who was able to handle a lot of pain. He is an exemplary person where he realized that uh, whatever comes from the source of existence, whatever comes from the life giver, is beautiful. Now, and this isn't about, I mean, I don't know how to put this in a way that doesn't sound like, um, superficial or cliche. It isn't about building up capacity to kind of be heroic in the face of a loss. It's about realizing that nothing is being lost when you find the eternal one. And keep in mind, Abraham is the person who's going through this trial. He is the same person who looked for his creator. And in the Quranic words, he said, لا أحب الآفلين. I don't love things that are transient. I don't love things that are passing. And then he found his creator. So he's coming into this uh, Abraham or Ishmael or his son. They're coming into the situation with the awareness of who God is, and so what befalls life. And we are in this journey. We are going through a life that's transient, and then we all have our specific challenges, where we see that what's happening is not fair, is a loss, and the Quran is there to teach us that what we think is a loss is actually not a loss, because when we panic and we are devastated, we have lost the understanding of the true reality of things, as if we don't have an owner, as if we're abundant. And Rumi has a beautiful saying, and he makes it, if I recall correctly, he makes it in the context of referring to the story of Abraham's sacrifice. He says, God is the one who takes away a half life and gives you an eternal life in return. He gives what doesn't enter your imagination. And that isn't going to happen in an unknown future. It's now. Who is giving me life right now? Who is giving the beauty, and where is the beauty that I see in the person coming from? If I'm in love with someone, or if I'm deeply attached, you know, I worry about my mother. I worry about my friend. I worry about my own self. Um, and people tend to think all religion is about not loving things because you should love God. No, the true religion that the Prophet ﷺ brought to us, and all the true prophets brought to us, is to see that our beloveds are manifesting a glimpse of the eternal beloved, and we cannot love them. We have only two choices. We can only love them either on their own, for in themselves, as if they are the source, and that's the biggest pain and suffering. And we discussed this when we talked about last in the previous receiving Nur halakas about Ya Baqi and Sal Baqi. So then when we reflect on the story, inshallah, we can ask the question, what is my Ishmael? And our Ishmael is the world. We love the world. But it's passing. Ishmael is going to be sacrificed. And then how does Abraham respond to this? He recognizes that actually things may seem to be passing, but they are all reflecting the eternal one. And in that regard, they are not passing. So maybe I'll just stop here. One other thing, one last thing I wanted to say. This passage in the Quran is about surrender. I mean, makes reference to Aslama, surrender to God. And one way that I initially wanted to talk about this was to surrender when a calamity strikes us. We don't choose to sacrifice our beloveds, but things happen to us that are painful, and then the underlying thing is transience, is the most painful thing that universally human beings go through. And then we need to kind of surrender and embrace it, because it comes from the source of life, the source of existence, and our creator cannot be against us. I think the breakthrough that Prophet Ibrahim and his son put before us is the breakthrough of seeing that whatever comes from the eternal creator is beautiful. He cannot ever be against us, because he's the one who makes us. But then as I was talking to Faraz, this word surrender or embracing can be misleading, because it may look like as if you should be hanging there, with the pain. It's not about hanging in there with the pain. It's about transforming that pain and realizing that um, my creator is the one who gives me life. How can he be against me? And that's why the son is able to surrender, because he knows where life is coming from. And when we struggle, we don't necessarily see that source. And so this is an invitation to see the source of where things are coming from. Who am I surrendering to? What is this God that I'm surrendering to? Um, and what does it mean to surrender? So Faraz mentioned to me, instead of surrender, maybe think about entrusting your son to God, entrusting your beloved to God, entrusting this transient world that we're attached to God. I love it and it's passing. I don't love that which sits, and yet I am in this situation I love, and things are passing. What do? I entrust them to you. Means that I'm open to seeing that the one who gave me this love for the world, for the beautiful things, for life, is not doing this to kind of torture me. He's giving me a foretaste, or giving me a taste of his endless beauty and endless life. So the transience has a solution by turning to the creator. So I'm going to pause here, and I would really encourage those of you who have missed it to go back to our discussions of um, last month's discussions of Ya Baqi and Sal Baqi. It's in YouTube, our playlist. And then also there is an article on our website, in Receiving Your website, on surrendering to God's knife of mercy with Abraham. Might be some resources. Thank you. Jazakumullah khair.
Jazakallah khair. Thank you, Professor Isra. Could you please translate Ya Baqi and Tal Baqi, because we have many new people and they are not part of Receiving Noor and may not have logged in to listen to the discussion.
Yeah. So um, it literally means all the eternal one, and it is a reflection on the verse that says everything is passing, perishing, except his face, his countenance. كل شيء هالك إلا وجهه. And we had discussed in a couple of episodes that the first time when we say ya Baqi, we disconnect from seeing the world in this painful situation where everything is passing. You get attached to things and everything is passing. It's endless pain. And then and that's the kind of the surgical operation. And then in the second time, you come back to the world with not getting attached to itself as if it's the source, but seeing it as a mirror to divine beauty in its coming into life and its death, and its flourishing, and it's also withering away. And in that, we love the things this time through as mirrors to the eternal one. And that way it's not a painful love anymore. And it really mirrors to Abraham's situation, because before and after the sacrifice, he still has a son, and the son is alive and well, but something has changed. Something has been enhanced for Abraham. What is he sacrificing? He's not sacrificing Ishmael, literally, but he is sacrificing, letting go of seeing Ishmael. And we can insert our beloveds, all our beloveds there. He starts seeing them as seeing Ishmael as a gift from God, rather than as a beautiful thing, as a lovable thing in itself. And that's the shift, inshallah, we all would like to have through the Quranic light.
Thank you, Professor Isra. There is a lot in your presentation, very key concepts, some of them quite difficult to grasp, the concept of sacrifice. Thanks for explaining it in the framework of not sacrifice, but entrusting. And thanks, Professor Faraz, for making this point as well. I hope he's with us. Professor Faraz is also a professor of Islamic studies. And thank you. I neglected to mention that Isra is joining us from Istanbul, Turkey, which is at a late hour. So I want to thank everyone who is joining us from across the pond, across the Atlantic as well, and across other time zones. So let's open it up. If you have questions or comments, and if you want to redirect the questions from the private chat into the public arena here so that we can discuss, please go ahead if you have comments and questions. Otherwise, you will have a chance to discuss later, inshallah, as well. Dr. Yamina will be speaking next. So I will go ahead and introduce her again for our new participants. Dr. Yamina Buginaya she's my friend and mentor, and she's the director of Receiving Noor, a nonprofit educational organization dedicated to empowerment and enrichment through Quranic spirituality. Yamina transitioned from her position as associate professor of Arabic and Islamic studies in order to commit to this project. In addition to extensive training in Islamic studies, both in traditional and academic settings, Yamina also holds a PhD in theoretical quantum physics. She has published extensively in several languages on Islam, especially on Quranic studies, Islamic spirituality, and the relationship between religion and science. As part of her current position, she has been offering online Quranic classes as well as extensive Quran workshops and spiritual retreats. Dr. Yamina, if you are.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
Doing well. So this story of Ibrahim alayhi salam, let me start from my reflection on what Isra just shared with us very quickly. So we have the surrender, the entrusting whatever is happening to God from both Ibrahim alayhi salam and peace be upon him, and his son, peace be upon him, and to what they thought had been asked of them, because in the text there is nowhere that God is asking directly Ibrahim to do anything. Ibrahim is relating to his son. That's what he saw in his dream, and it is the son who says, you do whatever you've been commanded. And in ayah, I think 105, which is often translated as Saddaqta ru'ya, you have fulfilled the dream, is actually Saddaqta is you've been true, you believed the dream. So it can be, it's open to understanding. So in my understanding, what they thought, because they both interpreted or took the dream literally, and from what happens later, we understand that it was not meant to be literal. But even though they took it literally, it's amazing that they surrendered. It's like, it can be very disturbing, but when we look at it within the context of this surah, right before, I think few ayats before that, Ibrahim alayhi salam is, we we're told about his relationship to his people and the idol, and how he leaves his people and he says, I am going to God, to my sustainer, so that he may guide me. So he's in that situation where he is very much aware of how we make things into idols. He is the one who breaks idols in the outer world, and he is looking for guidance with his Rabb, with his sustainer, whom he's been looking for. It's interesting because Ibrahim alayhi salam is very much like a person in the 20th century where the dominant culture is not of Tawheed, is not about God. God is not at the center of our lives or about of life in general. And so Ibrahim alayhi salam, that's why he's such a good role model, because his people, including his father, were idol worshippers. We have not yet opened up, unpacked what idol worshipper means. What's an idol, and what does it mean that we are making things into idols? So he has not inherited faith, as Susan had mentioned yesterday. So he had, and we are told in other parts in the Quran about his journey, his personal journey to seek his Rabb, which means that we all need to have a committed journey to seek our Rabb. So there is a personal effort, endeavor, before he receives revelation. It's actually because of his attitude and what he's doing of his journey that he becomes, how do you say, like a recipient. He becomes potentially recipient to the divine guidance. Before it was divine guidance too, it was fitri divine guidance, the divine guidance that we find in the way we are created. But then he gets verbal revelation, which is more explicit. So they surrender. So I'm leaving the part when he journeys and finds God. And we can see now what station, what of knowing God and trusting God he is at when he has this dream and he takes it literally, and he is willing to obey and surrender. This is amazing because when we know who God is our sustainer. God is the one who is sustaining me in life right here and now. He's sustaining my breathing, my seeing, my understanding, my everything. If I like something, like we say, justice, goodness, it's because I found it in me. And if I dislike evil or bad things or injustice, it's because I find it in me. I did not buy it somewhere. I did not make it. I found myself like this. So all this are indications, ayat, signs, letting me know that this is who my maker, my Rabb, my sustainer is, that he's the one who, for instance, loves justice, dislikes injustice, and that's how he created me this way. So the more we know God and the more we become familiar with his mercy, with his generosity, with his compassion, with his love for us, the more the love in the heart will start changing its direction from the world, from things, to the source of the world, to the source of those things that we think we like, we love, we appreciate. So from this,
Yamina, did you say the loving heart?
no, the heart will start, instead of loving the things around us that we take for granted, we appreciate them. The more we become acquainted with the source of what makes them lovable, the more the heart starts automatically turns to God, and the more we know Him as the source of goodness and everything and beauty and perfection, the more we find that we love Him and we love everything because of Him, as mirrors of His beautiful names, as something that takes us closer to Him. So Ibrahim alayhi salam is someone who's already gone through all this. He is close to God. He knows God as his Rabb. We are told this in other places in the Quran. He says, God, you is the one who, when I am sick, He's the one who heals me. He's the one who feeds me. He's the one. So this prophet of God, this messenger, knowing God this way, for him, it becomes, we can see why or how it becomes easier. It may not be easy, but for us, it's very disturbing what's going on. But when we change the lens, the perspective, when we see the relationship between Ibrahim and his son and God, between the created beings and God, when we know God, then we know that whatever He creates has a purpose, whatever there is hikmah, there is wisdom, and there is compassion, there is rahmah. His rahmah encompasses everything. We can observe and witness this. So when something like this happens, our first response is, we don't react and say, what's going on? Like, we respond with you gave me the compassion, so what's going on here? What do you want to teach me? And so you can understand, it's easier to handle how Ibrahim and his son are willing to go ahead with their literal understanding. Now, Isra mentioned, or I think she said that Faraz had mentioned, that what we are taught through the Prophet is not how to build our capacity to endure, but how to learn to shift our perception, or at least I'm articulating it this way, to transform our relationship with God and therefore with the world. When we transform our relationship with God, then our relationship with ourselves and with the world is also going to totally transform. And here, so each story in the Quran, the stories of the prophets, we are being taught something that we cannot learn without divine guidance. And here there is something very crucial, very significant, very enlightening going on. So yes, they surrendered, and we are supposed to have learned that. But more than that is that they have been taught something new. They have been taught how to destroy idols metaphorically. And here we are.
Who is they?
They is Ibrahim alayhi salam and his son. Because remember, even when a prophet is like for instance, misunderstand something, if it is mentioned in the Quran, that misunderstanding itself is something for me to understand something new. Through it, God is bringing out a law, a divine law of being that is being made, revealed to us. So there, it's the new thing is that Ibrahim alayhi salam has destroyed the idols in the outer world. He actually went and physically destroyed them. Now, how do we physically destroy the idols in our inner world? This is the breakthrough in the story of Ibrahim, in his dealing with idols. Because now it's saying you destroy the idol out there, but like in the Surah Al-Baqarah, the cow or the calf, because they were not unwillingly, the people were told, Musa alayhi salam told them to slaughter the calf. Unwillingly, they ended up doing it, but soon after, they made a golden one. It means inside, they are still they have not released their attachment to the calf. Here, the calf is also an idol. So it could be like what Isra said, Ismail is the calf, could be the world or anything in the world. So that horizontal connection, relationship that we imagine to have with the world, with others, it is an imaginary because there is no such a thing as horizontal relationship. All relationships are vertical, first to God, then to that thing. And the simple example that I usually give is the telephone. This telephone, it feels, a child may think that this telephone is related, connected to everyone in the contact list, but it is not true. The child doesn't know that we're paying to be connected to a satellite. That server is connecting us to everything else. And so similarly, when we are in ghafla, when we live in mindlessness, in that darkness of God is someone very far, we don't really know him, there is no heart connection with him, that's why there is no love, because if we don't know him, how can we love him? In that state of mind, that state of being, it seems like everything exists separately, independently of anything else, and we have connections with each other. And those connections seem to be horizontal. They are not. The first step of Tawheed is to question those horizontal connections. And yesterday we did it with water. Can water give life to a plant? Can air sustain my life when it's lifeless, unconscious, powerless air sustain? What I'm doing, I am questioning the falsely assumed horizontal relationship between us. And when that is assumed, the air is becoming a small idol. It's giving me somehow maintaining my life. When the more we know God and we start questioning and undoing those imaginary, illusory horizontal relationships, then we start seeing that everything is connected to one, and through the one, everything is connected. I am connected to everyone and everything through the one. I have to first let go of everything. This is what we did in Ya Baqi Anta al-Baqi, or Eternal One, you are the Eternal One. When I let go of everything, you are not idols, there is only one source of everything, then I come back, and through him we can relate to everything and everyone. And here it is teaching that inner, the inner destroying of idols, because it seems like there are idols out there, but it's my perception of things that makes them idol. It is my connection, my relationship with them, the nature of my relationship that makes them an idol. It is my love for the world, or my love for my child, forgetting about the true nature of this world and the true nature of our relationship. The love that I have in me is not mine, it has been put in me. I have been made to love and care for this child, but in my heedlessness, in my ghafla, mindlessness, I am either unaware of that or I forget that reality. And so it seems to me like this is my child, this is their world, this is my thing. How can you ask me to let go of it? And you can see the healing and the rahmah, the compassion. Lo and behold, it was to be understood metaphorically and not literally. And of course, because Ibrahim alayhi salam was willing to let go of his child, it means because why was he willing and ready, even though it was hard? Because he knew that his child is actually a gift from God. So we are not the true lovers, the true owners, the true caretakers. We are only appointed for a certain time. So I think the most important thing here is, yes, there is a surrender, definitely. And what is more is there is an inner destroying the idols in our inner world. And not through what Ibrahim alayhi salam understood, because that's what he knew. Destroy the idols, you slaughter your son, you sacrifice your son. He says, no, you did that, okay? Now there is another level that is much more subtle, and that is at the origin of all idol making. And that's why it's so important, and that's why it's at the heart of Tawheed, because without this inner breaking idols in our inner world, we'll break an idol outside and then we'll make a new idol.
Thank you, Dr. Yamina. There is a quick question of how do we let go of everything and everyone?
There are various steps, and we went through one when we studied Everything is Perishing Except His Countenance, realizing that everything is perishing, is transient. Death and transience is actually, it's the first step, because the more we keep transience alive in our daily life, the more we are likely to start perceiving things as what they are. It means ayat, it means they are being sent on purpose, because then we see the flow, we become aware of the flow. Usually when we are living in mindlessness, we're not aware of the flow. Yes, we know that things will end, but we relate to them as though they were going to stay forever and we are going to stay forever, as though there is no end. And that's what we are told again and again in the Quran. And then once we start becoming aware of the transience, together with the transience, then I said, for instance, air or water doesn't have, lifeless water cannot give life to a plant or to any living thing. The fact that water is also transient and something that comes and goes, it means that it is being made itself. We are told in the Quran repeatedly, these things that you think are making something, creating something, they cannot create anything because they are themselves being created. And so we start, if they are transient, we start looking, it means each of their attributes, qualities is transient. Because sometimes you say, yes, but like the food is alive, so it could be that the food is giving life to me. It's alive when I eat it, it's already not alive, but it's not life, it's not from itself. It is just like me. So its life is transient. How can it give life to others when it cannot even protect its own life? So this transience, we can apply it to all the qualities, anything we are attracted to, anything our heart is moved by or seeks in the world, apply transience to it, and the relationship with it is going to change. And the relationship, we realize that, lo and behold, it was a mirage. It was an illusion. There is no horizontal relationship between me and that thing. There is a relationship, but it is not horizontal. It is only through him. That's why it becomes crucial and vital to establish a relationship with God, because only through him my life has meaning. Only through him I have true connections and relationship with the rest of the world, and meaningful relationships at that. Without him, we have to stay in the darkness of mindlessness, for fear of the incoherence of the world. If we start questioning, being honest with ourselves, that's why we cannot be authentic when we are in ghafla, in mindlessness, because we can't ask honest questions because there is fear. If I ask the question, it's like cutting the branch you're standing on. But when we have a connection with God and through God with everything, there is no branch. You are standing on very sound ground.
Dr. Alia had a question. And thank you, our hostess, Sister Zahra Chima, for alerting me. Please keep the alerting. Go ahead, Dr. Alia.
Assalamu alaikum. Jazakallah khair for all of this beautiful, inshallah, transformative, inshallah, discussions. So, Yamina, when you were saying like Prophet Ibrahim had already started a journey, like he started the journey outside of his people to find out who is God. Like that was like, for me, that is, you know, that is a big lesson for all of us, like to start that journey. And then when he started that journey, then revelation, you know, came to him. But to come to that last point, which seems so unthinkable, like for me, like, you know, just thinking about
Which is the last?
Everything, which is like the decision to submit to slaughtering his son. But look at how God says he does not ordain on anyone in Surah Al-Baqarah, the end of it, anything that we cannot handle. So, but then the steps of handling were his life journey. Like he has seen himself fire become cool. Like it's not something that someone told him. And even though that might be short-lived, but it must have been so thrown into the fire. What's more than that? What's more than that? And then the other story in the Quran, there are other stories that are not in the Quran, but if we just take the stories in the Quran, the story that he took his wife and left her, no internet, no cell phone, no way of knowing what's happening, walking, I don't know how many months to get there, or on back, a camel back, how many months to get there, or on a donkey, how many months to get there, with a newborn baby in the middle of a barren desert with no water. Like if that is not for any one of us a death sentence for a precious wife and a long-awaited son, but yet, and the wife, like the whole family, the wife is asking him, the only questions is asking, is that ordained upon you by God? And yes, once he says yes, then she starts looking, she's looking for the water. He leaves her and goes back because his order is to go back. So can you imagine, before he comes back, how many years have passed? How many times has he thought about his wife and son? How many, prayers has he sent their way? How many, there was no cell phones, he could not know. And then to come back and see that they're not only surviving, but Allah has sent, his dua was accepted, Allah has sent people that are around them. The fruits of his submission is already, he's already seeing it. And now when this higher test comes in, he already knows that he has, sometimes it looks very scary, but when you say, when he breaks it down, not only him, the amazing thing in the Quran, that it's him and his son are both submitting, which means that they both believe that whatever this is gonna end up happening, there is wisdom in it that's beyond us. I'm leaving my wife and baby. There is wisdom beyond me, and I'm ordered to do it. So, and there will be khair. And then he saw the khair. So now the son must know the story. His mother must have told him the story millions of times growing up. So now when it's his turn, he uses the same logic. Then I don't see it. I don't know what's happening. But if it's an order from God, then their khair will come out. And this is to reach, I think, to that level. That's what's special about his whole family, the whole family, that they get to reach to that level, that they realize when things are happening that don't make any sense, that nothing looks good, that as long as it's ordained by God, it is coming. SubhanAllah. They trust. So that trust is
they know who God is.
So I guess for us, it looks very difficult to even think about it, because we have not developed any kind of trust. I have not developed even this much of trust that my worries about my son or my daughter or my job, will be taken care of. I have not developed that much trust. So it's very difficult for me to think of how can he jump to this much trust.
The trust is not developed. It's like the love. It is given. The more you know someone as trustworthy, you find yourself trusting him. The more you know someone as beautiful, beautiful in the sense of the beautiful names, the more the heart will
love them,
love him. Yeah. So it is about knowing who our sustainer is, who God is as our sustainer.
And if I may add, it's also about recognizing that the alternative is not, it's imaginary. We think that if we don't entrust it to God, we can handle it ourselves somehow. And the reality is there is no way you're handling this. So it isn't that's why it's important to understand that it's not just, you know, a command that comes to me and I can say yes to it or no to it. If Abraham said no to the command, he would still have the son. It's not that kind of situation. Abraham's plight at that moment represents our plight, and there's no way out of it. Where it's not like when I don't find the eternal one, that the world is not going to be transient, that my beloved is not being sacrificed anyway, sacrificed in the negative sense, I mean being lost. So it isn't, you know, we don't realize that. We think that we are on the ship and the ship is sailing fine, and shall I, you know, trust the ship or shall I trust God? No, the ship is wrecked. The ship is, and that's why in the Quranic tropes the people are more open to receive or at least turn to God momentarily when they are in the ship and the ship is in turmoil, and they say, oh, wait a second, who can help us, right? What we don't realize is we go through life and we don't realize that we are in that ship that's shaking. We numb ourselves, so we don't realize that we are in a ship that's shaking. And that's why it's very profound that Imam Nursi reads, for instance, as we studied before together, when Yunus, Jonah, is in the belly of the whale. I am Jonah, and the sea, in turmoil that he's thrown into, is the sea of transience. That I live in a world, it's constantly passing. Every day is passing, every moment is passing, and whatever I'm attached to and I love has doesn't even come close to giving any sense of genuine security to me. Right? I mean, even during this, I don't know if this is the best example, but you know, even during this pandemic time, you know, we say, oh, our health, you know, providers, they're amazing, they're heroes. They themselves get sick and die. I don't mean we shouldn't be grateful for people who are risking their lives, not at all. But I'm saying you can't put your trust in them either, because they are creatures. Even the best doctor cannot save his own health or life. Where do I turn? I think what we don't understand is that we are in a big trouble, as it were, already, and we need to find the one that we can and trust our life, our beloved's life, and the meaning and the beauty that we long for. We need it.
So we need to be honest. Authenticity, integrity is important. Honest is the fact that everything is transient. Of course, we don't want to repeat this because it's so it's so uncomfortable. We don't know what to do with it in the beginning, but we need to familiarize ourselves with it, because it is when we stay with that discomfort, with that pain, with that fear, with that anxiety towards transience, that will urge us to go on a journey like Ibrahim alayhi salam. Otherwise, we won't look for a solution. And that's why when we read something like this and we are in the darkness of ghafla, of mindlessness, we always, without realizing, that's the whole thing about being mindless, by being unaware, it means I am not aware of what I am doing. When it gives me, for instance, the story of he is told to leave his wife and child in a barren land, immediately we say we don't like it. Okay, we may not like it, but if I take the dislike as from him, as an ayah, an indication, so you made me dislike it, yet you are creating something like this. What does it mean? That's something different. But we take it as if the dislike is mine and I don't like it, and what's going on here? Why? And I take it as if there is an alternative in my fantasy world, in my imagination, that if they didn't go there, they would be living forever and ever happy. We don't know. Like the child here, tomorrow the child may not be alive anyway. His life is not mine and it's not his. This concept, this reality, we need to familiarize ourselves with it. That's the only way we can know who God is, who is maintaining my life right here and now. But if I see it like, why should I spend my life is, the purpose of my life is to worship, to know God and worship him. Why should I have my life, I'm busy. It's because in my imagination, I have a life separate from God somehow. And I have lots of things to do. And not only that, let's say we don't discuss this, we don't question this. And I am taking it for granted that I'm going to live 40 years and I have planned for 40 years. Who said you have 40 years? You may not be in this world tomorrow. That's the big, big delusion. That's why transience is the first thing to make ourselves familiarize ourselves with. It is only when we face transience honestly, and how we look at it, once through it, that transience is the gate to know God, the gate to eternity, to the eternal names of God. That's the only way we will realize that what we call thing, and that's what we make into idols by loving them for themselves in themselves as if they were sources of anything, through that imaginary horizontal relationship. Actually, there is no such a thing. Those things and my relationship with them are all ayat. They are all messengers from beyond telling me about the meaning of life, the meaning of the purpose of my life here, where I'm going, where I came from, who is my Rabb, why should I care about him, about Akhirah, how is it relevant to me, why is it important for me, he does not need it, I am the one who needs it. All that will start to make sense and unfold when we are grounded in the reality and not in the fantasy of bracketing out transience, for instance.
There is a question that Sister Zahra, our host, needs to read because it's anonymous. And yes, please feel free to send your questions to Sister Zahra. And I cannot see raised hands, so I'm gonna depend on Sister Zahra for the folks who are raising their hands. I'm sorry, I don't mean to ignore you. It's just not visible to me. Please go ahead, Sister Zahra.
Assalamu alaikum. I really like the reference to asking honest questions because I think we have one here. And it is from someone who asked that it be read as an anonymous question. So when we assign roles and responsibilities to people, so for example, we expect a mother, or we say a mother is supposed to care and nurture and love a child, does that mean we should not expect care and nurture from that individual because that expectation is creating a mini idol of them?
Zahra, could you kindly repeat the question?
Sure. So when we assign roles and responsibilities to people, so for example, a mother, I think we universally kind of think a mother is a nurture and cares for her child. So when we expect that to come from a mother, for example, does that mean that we shouldn't expect that from them because by doing so, we're creating a mini idol in them?
Is there anyone who would like to answer?
Yeah, I just think that I think that if we expect that the nurturing is coming from the mother, like that she is the source of nurturing, like it only comes through her, whether it's the mother or the father, like this, whether it's nurturing or support or whatever you want, if it's just them, it's like they are the source, then I've already created an idol from them. But then when you're receiving it from them, because like a mother cannot stop love coming from her, cannot stop, like it's something that is channeled through her, like, you know, it's something that she enjoys doing, like, you know, that comes through her and she's enjoying it, and she's like, you know, and it's the fitra that Allah created in her. And it's not just human beings. Like if we look around us with birds, with animals, you know, they all have that fitra, all the fitra to, like, you know, to court, to get a spouse, to get married. And the birds, like, you know, get themselves into beautiful shapes and dance special dances to attract, like, you know, their spouse. Isn't, like, how do they know that? Like, you know, then mothers, like the way they care for their babies, even mothers who care for other species babies, we've seen that, like, you know, and even cross species, like, you know, an animal feeding fish, like, you know, so we've seen, this is all their fitra. So that like, if I think it's just the mother, she is the source, then that is the mini idol that I've created. And it could be reverse. It could be the son, like I could create a mini idol from my son or from my spouse. But once I realized that the mother, like, you know, that what is coming through her is like that she's like, you know, enjoying the love that's coming through her. She is reflecting the love that God has put in her. Then you're more amazed by this, like the source of the love. So I guess that, yeah, that's my response to the question. But Yamina, you definitely have a better response.
I think the question addresses the issue of expectations. So expectations in general, but go ahead.
I actually would like to add to the question, and Jazakallah khair, whoever asked the question, it is a very important one. It occurred me the other day, is it too much or inappropriate to expect consistency in the mirror? Because we talk about things not being the source of the beauty that they display. They are mirrors to the real source. So then if you're receiving this kindness, support, and so on, so from someone, don't think that the person is the source. You know, he or she is a mirror through which things are, you know, mirror to the real source, the creator God. But I thought, you know, when they don't reflect with this understanding, when you don't reflect, you say, well, I know you're not the source. So sometimes you go dark because you are not the source. Mirrors can be uneven, can have moments of shining and moments of not shining. But the question that came to me was that, is it too much to expect the mirror to be consistently light? You know, sometimes things go dark, and
then maybe there is maybe it's not really a mirror. In our heart, we are forgetting that it's only a mirror.
Yeah, I think, yeah, maybe that's why it's the attachment, because part of me was like, I mean, wouldn't it be nice if it was more consistent? So I will add that to the question, what is happening?
And it's nice to realize that we have been given this desire for the flow to be more consistent. It means we are in love with the flow of those beautiful names. And so the problem is when we start forgetting that it's people are channels or like mirrors, And so our expectation is to the person, and there we start having relationship problems, because as if my need is going to be fulfilled, that person needs to fulfill my need. That person cannot fulfill their need. We, even our own needs, the more conscious we become, we ask for help. We become more aware that we are recipient and receivers, and we become more and more open to receive through being authentic, being honest, like Ibrahim alayhi salam, when he was on his journey to look for Rabb, for his sustainer, and he looks at planets and things and stars, and each time he sees that it is transient. Again, the key word is transience. They don't last, so he understands it can't be. And so that he fulfills the La ilaha. Once he understands that this cannot be my Rabb, then he says, he prays, he prays to God, he asks God for guidance. So it's then where he becomes open to receive the revelation. Each time he says, he looks for something, and how was the text? لئن لم قال
لأكونن من الضالين.
لئن لم يهديني ربي لأكونن من القوم الظالمين. Yes, thank you. You reminded me.
Yamina, there is a follow-up, an important follow-up with the question from Professor Andrea Zubik. Maybe the question is, if those moms who are not so nurturing, how they reflect the source of nurturing is God, how the dark refers to the source of light.
If we take the metaphor that Isra used, that is a traditional metaphor of mirror, or you can take a channel. So when something beautiful, a caring, loving mother, that love and care, as Alia said, we can see it not only in human being, but other species too. And so clearly, as the baby is born, just like the milk comes, that love and compassion comes with it. However, it is not 100%, because it is not how do you say, deterministic rule. It is bound to the will of God. And so we can see that it's not from mother equals caring, because Alhamdulillah, it's a tiny minority, but some mothers are not so caring or not caring at all. So clearly it is not from the mother. When there is no care, the mirror is not reflecting anything. The person is, for any reason, we don't know if it is to do with the will of the person or not, that's a totally different subject, but it's like there is a blockage. The light is not being reflected. And even when we reflect, we don't reflect it always in a beautiful way. Sometimes we block it, or sometimes we let the care come, but we make it, we listen of its value, but claiming that it's mine. And then I say, like, I looked after you, I love you, how come you do this? Or as if it was mine from Ma, I gave it to you. And so that sacred source is, the sacred origin and source of that love is being cut off. And so the meaning, the beauty of that love diminishes, because now it becomes my love. But otherwise it is a love, a universal love, and a tiny bit is being reflected in my tiny mirror.
Thank you. Sister Amina Stevens had a question.
Assalamu alaikum. I don't know that it was a question so much, except to say thank you. This is such a profound sharing, particularly in your speaking about letting go of the shirk within. I had an experience with that recently, with something small. But it was a lesson and a noticing that even though I was doing something I felt it was a giving that I felt necessary, I was still holding on the inside. And yet I saw as this thing unfolded why I had to let go of something, that was, there's a saying, and I think that, I don't know if I remember it right, but sometimes we have to let go of what we love in order to experience a greater love, you know, in order that the heart of understanding can expand. But for me, there was that pause. Okay, I'm letting go, but right? And the but was my pause of, yeah, I'm letting go of this, but, and I think that pause, had I had a different perspective in that moment, is something that's very pregnant. It's really pregnant with the unknown, and that the real, perhaps the meaning of trust is not I'm doing this and I know what's going to happen, or even that I know good is going to come from it. I am just doing what my heart feels it needs to do. And the rest is in God's hands. We're between God's hands. And if there's an unfolding that I need to see or become aware of, it will be made self-evident. So it was just a little silly thing that I had to wrestle with. But that wonderful imagery, I don't know whether you said Sayyidina Ibrahim and the golden calf. In my thinking, it's the story of Sayyidina Musa and the golden calf with his people. But then I have that coming. Yeah. And so it was that wonderful image and that deeper understanding. So I thank you so much for that. It made me say, yes, I can pause with the pauses. That's good to do. I don't have to know. I don't have to understand and figure, but just to continue to learn how to trust the heart. So, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That's very important. That's when, you know, if we know everything, then life would be meaningless. It's like when we are open and we trust the unknown, that's where the miracles are going to happen. And that's where we, each new happening will bring us close to God. And miracle here is anything that takes us, reminds us of God, takes us closer to God. And you said that it is, the trust is put in us, and it reminded me of Ibrahim alayhi salam. When he spoke to his father, who was an idol worshipper, and then when he says to his father, how come you take idols for gods? Like, this is truly like misguidance, like going astray from you and your people, going astray from the truth. Right after that, we are told, and this is how we gave Ibrahim alayhi salam nuri. We made him see. وَكَذَلِكَ نُورِ Ibrahim malakut as-samawati wal ard. This is how we gave him insight, or we made him see the malakut, the inner aspect that looks to the beautiful names, the malakut, the dominion of the heavens and the earth. So that he might become one of those who have certainty, inward certainty. ليكون وليكون من الموقنين. So it is given. Everything is given. Like Alia was saying, how we trust. No, we know our journey is, our commitment is to start this journey of living more mindfully, questioning our assumptions about the world, and getting and accepting the reality of transience, getting to know God. The more we do this, we will start to know him with his beautiful names. We will start being familiar with the seemingly hidden aspect of things, the malakut of things that looks to God, which now seems like we don't see it, I just see things. The moment we start questioning, we start seeing that, for instance, water, air, they are glorifying God, they are praising God with his beautiful names. For instance, water is definitely saying the giver of life is him. There is no giver of life except him. He is the one who knows everything, who gives life to everything, at least this. So that is given to us. And the more we know God this way, the more the heart will love him, and then back and love everything in his name through him, because they are lovely and lovable through his creating them that way, making them that way. What is lovable in them belongs to him only. And that's time as when Ibrahim alayhi salam was given the malakut, when he started being aware of this side, this aspect of creation, which is the purpose. That's why creation was created for. That is the other aspect, was our own illusion and delusion. When we start seeing things for what they are, then we are made of the muqinin. We have yaqeen. We have certainty.
There is a question to Dr. Isra, Dr. Yamina, and Dr. Alia. Aren't you worried that some moms and dads do what Ibrahim did to his family without the understand? I think the questioner means without the proper understanding from God.
In the Quranic narrative, there is nowhere where God says to Ibrahim to sacrifice his son. We are told that Ibrahim alayhi salam tells his son that he saw that he had to sacrifice him in his dream. So it's Ibrahim alayhi salam telling his dream to his son. The son says, do as you have been commanded. And then we are told, Saddaqta ru'ya, which is often, I checked a few days ago, it's translated as you have fulfilled the dream, but Saddaqta in Arabic, you go for the first meaning first, which is you believed, you have been true to the vision. Actually, Ibrahim alayhi salam says, Ra'aytu fil manami, and then when God speaks, he says, Ar-ru'ya, saddaqta ar-ru'ya. And then, of course, because there is sincerity, so we understand that if the command was to sacrifice the son, then how come the command was not fulfilled? They were stopped. It means that was not the command. God does not give a command and then say, oh, I was just checking you. It was a test. Some commentators understood it could be also a test for his knowledge of interpreting dreams, because they believe that Ibrahim alayhi salam was already surrendering. But I see it as teaching Ibrahim alayhi salam and all of us through him that there are two steps in destroying the idols. One is the outer one, but then there is the inner one. And before he is taught this huge lesson, because that's the shortcut. Once there's no idol in my heart, then I won't make anything into an idol. But when I'm destroying the idols outside, it is good, because it is cultivating my sincerity, my belief, I am asserting that this is not God, la ilaha, again and again. But at a point, I have to say illallah, and la ilaha has to be in the heart. That inner connection, my perception and connection, relationship with the world has to transform. And this is what Ibrahim alayhi salam and his son were taught, and through them we have been, so they are role models for us. So nowhere was he told to sacrifice his son. That's how he interpreted. He took it literally, but from what we have been told in the Quran, we understand that it was not meant to be taken, because literally he would have again stayed in the same level of destroying the idols outside. So here there is a huge breakthrough, a huge lesson, something that neither Ibrahim nor any human being would have learned on their own. It's something that we need divine guidance, God, to teach us. That I will teach you, it's like I teach you a way to destroy all the idols at once in your heart. I mean, it's not at once, because even in the heart we make new idols, but it's a shorter cut than destroying them outside. And when inwardly they are not idols, if need be for them to be destroyed, it will be easy, because we don't have attachment to them anymore.
And tomorrow, inshallah, you're gonna expand on the topic of destruction of idols and the La ilaha part of Illallah, correct?
Inshallah, as you want.
Inshallah. Because we're reaching our, go ahead, please.
I said I'm just on the floor. Is there someone else speaking?
Dr. Isra, did you wanna add something to answer the question that was addressed to you?
I think the question is coming, and I'm grateful for the question. It helps us highlight and notice more what's happening in the Quranic story. The question is coming from a place where we see the story in its as if it's about glorifying the child abuse, but it has nothing to do with it, right? So that's what we want to realize. It is nothing to do with it, because, as we know, in the Islamic tradition, as well as in Christian and Jewish tradition, any form of child sacrifice is clearly forbidden, and they all have a version of the story at the heart of their scripture. So this cannot be about, be willing to kill your child when God tells you to do so. It has nothing to do with it. It is about that transformation that our beloveds, and it's not about your child per se. It could be your own self. It could be your mother. It could be the world that we are, or life that we're in general in love with and attached to. So it is about transforming our relationship with our beloveds. Rumi has invokes the story in the context of misfortunes that befall us, and things happen to us and we don't like them, and we resent them. Why is this happening to me? Why is this sickness? Why is this situation? And he says, just like Ishmael, lay your head before the knife of Abraham. And God does, and then he continues to say, God doesn't want your life. He just wants you to trust and surrender. So this isn't about, I will see a dream, and according to this dream I'll consult with my child. We're completely missing the point when we go that direction, because it's not about that. It's about, we are losing our beloveds all the time, and what are we going to do with this? And we are going through life, and things that are beyond our control are happening, and things that we initially perceive as painful are happening. What do we do with them? And Ibrahim alayhi salam's breakthrough is to recognize that whatever comes from this eternal source of life and beauty is not against that, is always for us. But how do I see it? It's not convenient, it's painful, I don't want it. Yes, these are all initial levels of misunderstanding what's happening. But when we realize that if I don't even control, as Yamin always says, I don't even control my breathing, who am I not to trust the one who makes me breathe? And so with that trust, we start seeing the world differently, and we start responding differently. The calamity, it doesn't mean you won't get sick. Doesn't mean things will happen your way all the time, but you will realize, we will inshallah realize, that whatever is coming from the source of all power and beauty is there to help us connect with him and help us find eternal one. So that process involves turning away from getting stuck in the mirrors. You can call it sacrifice, you can call it idol breaking, but it is a healing process, not a process of loss. So the story is completely taking us in a different direction. Similarly, I mean, the Quranic passage, when Musa alayhi salam's mother puts the baby in the basket, the story is not telling us that when it comes to your heart, put your child in a basket. Like, we're missing the point. The point is to see that we are under God's care wherever, even if when we look, it looks like we're abundant in the sea. Even if your most beloved mother seems to be like abandoning you, you're never abundant. And that's the spiritual journey that we are invited, inshallah.
Thank you.
We miss the point when we don't know God as our Rabb, as the one who gave me the child and the love for the child, and the one who is taking care of my life, my child, and the love for my child right here and now. And so if everything was to abandon me, he is the one who makes me not want to be abundant in order to find him, because he's the source of all care, all love, all mercy, all compassion. When we don't know God this way, then it's very easy to misunderstand and start panicking and what's going on here, because in that panic lies a way of being that is disconnected from God. I perceive myself, it feels that I am here, independent of God. I know there must be God. That's not what the whole thing is, to know who this God is. That's my own illusion that I also need to let go. It's an illusion. I am not independent, separate from, I'm not independent of God. He creates me in connection with the whole world, so I understand this reality. Someone has to be creating the light, the air, the water, the food, my body, my cells, everything right now. My life, my breathing, my seeing, my understanding, my awareness, nothing is mine. But in ghafla, I assume falsely that they are mine. And if they are mine, then yours is yours and it's theirs. So where is God? And so when I'm told a story like this, I said, what's going on? Why am I told something like this?
Thank you. Sister Zahra, can you please read some of the comments before we close? And Dr. Yamina, please let us know if you want to do the breath work before we end the session.
Depends on everyone. Yes, we can do.
Oh, yes, of course.
Okay.
Everyone is, yes, of course.
So
Can I add a comment, please?
please go ahead. And then after that, Sister Zahra, can you please read the, give us, check the chat box and read some comments. Please go ahead, Dr. Ziba.
Yeah, so I am a beginner in this journey, and it takes lots of practice, because I have been like just cooking food for your kids, you know, it comes, I love cooking for them. So till now I've been taking credit of that, oh, I love cooking and I make special dishes for them. So right now also, like, I have to stop myself and consciously think about it, that Allah, you gave me this love of cooking. It's coming through you, from you, through me. And then make that connection to Allah, that I'm doing it for, because you have given me that, and you are the one who has put that in me. And then if then my kids enjoy the food, and maybe if they're not thankful, then I won't have that much of regret, you know, because I haven't put everything for seeking their acceptance or pleasure, you know. So my pleasure was attached to my Rabb, that you put that in me, and I'm doing it to please you. And it might be for my friend, I'm doing something, same things. Like if I do it for seeking Allah's face, then it doesn't disappoint me. When it's a human nature, you tend to build expectations. So when that vertical connection comes instead of horizontal, then that torture which you suffer yourself is taken away. And it's still practice, you know. It's never like there is a small element you might find yourself seeking, you know, but it's a constant practice. And I'm making it for my kids. I'm not there tomorrow, then also Allah is the sustainer. That trust I have to have, that they might make it for themselves. I'm not the one who is doing all this for them. I won't be there for them always. So I think it's I am very beginner in this journey, so it takes a lot of effort to come back, stop yourself, think about it, and then renew your intention. So that's my take on it.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ziba.
You.
Sister Zahra.
Bismillah. So I'll do a quick chat box review. So I think today a lot of people just kind of put in the chat box when maybe a word or phrase really resonated with them. So some of those were, nothing is lost when you find the divine. Another phrase that resonated is, if we don't know him, how can we love him? And then comments about Baki until Baki, the eternal one. And someone commented that just appreciating hearing the reminder that I need to let go of everyone and cut all the mini idols and connect vertically. And I can feel the love, feel that love through everything and everyone. Another phrase that resonated was destroying the idols in our inner world. Let me skim real quick. And then just kind of more recently, we had some comments. So someone, Sister Ziba, really appreciated the cooking analogy that you made. And one of the phrases that you use to renew your intention, that it's a continuous process of renewal and remembrance. Somewhat, let's see. Tasnia commented, it's about transforming our relationship with our beloveds. And she found that very powerful. She said, we start responding differently to the calamity because we trust the source. SubhanAllah. And Andrea said, to see that, meaning the trust, to see that you need to see prayers answered And for this, we need to pray and talk to God, and we need to know what we mean when we say God. And the last comment, another analogy of, you know, the analogy that if someone intentionally scratches my arm, I scream, but I trust the doctor when she cleans my wound. So again, trusting that the source is completely taking care of us and sustaining us. And that is the chat box summary. Over to you, Maha.
Okay, there was another comment from Dr. Sana Mahmood. Thank you very much for enlightening talk and discussions, a reminder to renew our faith. So right now, I'm gonna hold on, if you don't mind, the person who sent a private question. It's a very loaded question, so we're gonna hold on to the question tomorrow. We're gonna address your question, don't worry. So please join us everyone tomorrow. I hope your first 9 days of Dhul Hijjah are going well. I'm learning a lot about Tawheed, the ABCs of Tawheed, and creating idols and destroying idols. So this is something that we can ponder on throughout the 9 days, now 7 days left in Dhul Hijjah, while we amp our acts of worship, because these are special, blessed days, surrounded by angels and with lots of blessings. So may Allah illuminate our hearts and open us to a closer connection with Allah. Right now, we're gonna have a couple of items left on the agenda for today before we close. Dr. Yamina is gonna guide us into a breathing, contemplation, and sometimes we call it tafakkur or tadabbur or ta'ammul, in the footsteps of our prophets, inshallah, how they spent months and months and, you know, in seclusion, thinking and contemplating. And this is our one tool. This is one tool that we're trying to learn to expand our own introspective faculties. So Dr. Yamina is gonna guide us into a 4-minute, correct?
Inshallah.
4-minute. It's silent. I'm going to put she's gonna give us directions right now. So it's gonna be silent. And so I'm gonna mute myself. And then after that, we're gonna close with a dua from Dr. Yamina, and then with the Labayk chant, hoping to see you tomorrow after that. So please go ahead, Dr. Yamina.
So it's a tool to learn to listen to our inner inside, to pause from the distraction of the world, the distraction that takes us away from being mindful. So it is a commitment, a tool to use in our journey to seek the truth, seek God, seek our purpose in this life. So it's very important, because it's the beginning. Once we learn this, when you are doing this, which is as we are breathing, we are amazed at the miracle of breathing, how it is done unto us through this breathing. Something outside is coming in, and with it, my life is being sustained. Someone is sustaining my life, sustaining me in life. Something amazing, wonderful is going on right now inside me. The more, so the intention is just to observe and be aware. And after a while, you will start being aware that you are watching all this activity. You are being aware of those feelings of awe and amazement. So who is that is being aware of all this? In mindlessness, in ghafla, in heedlessness, there is a confusion. We don't know what is what. But the more we pause and listen, the more things starts getting clarity, especially when we learn to ask the right questions as we are taught in the Quran. Who is breathing when I am breathing? Who is giving life to me when I think I am being alive? That's what we want to contemplate, inshallah. Bismillah. Bismillah. We close our eyes to make it easy, to not be distracted, inshallah. Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. Astaghfirullah, astaghfirullah. نستغفر الله العظيم الكريم الرحيم الذي لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم ونتوب إليه سبحانه. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد. اللهم صل صلاة كاملة وسلم سلاما تاما على سيدنا محمد الذي تنحل بالعقد وتنفرج بالكرب وتقضى به الحوائج وتنال به الرغائب وحسن الخواتم ويستسقى الغمام بوجهه الكريم وعلى آله وصحبه في كل لمحة ونفس بعدد كل معلوم لك. آمين والحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. لله الفاتحة. اللهم صل. الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. آمين والحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. May Allah make us of those who commit to seek His face in everything. And
Thank you, everyone, for being with us. We appreciate your presence and your participation, your comments, your questions. Thank you so much, Jazakallah khair, Dr. Isra, for your valuable presentation. Thank you, Dr. Yamina. And thank you, Sister Zahra, for hosting. We're going to end on Labayk. May we be in that state of mind in answering the call to God in a state of Labayk. See you tomorrow, everyone.
لبيك لا شريك لك لبيك إن الحمد والنعمة لك والملك لا شريك لك لبيك اللهم لبيك لبيك لا شريك لك لبيك إن الحمد